but it was like putting the scale of Bitcoin mining in perspective. It would be like trying to find one specific grain of sand on the beaches of 10,000 Earth-like planets. I mean, there's two things. There's like Bitcoin mining, the process, and then there's Bitcoin mining, like what is a Bitcoin miner doing? On the lost Bitcoin thing, like what a River, I think, estimates that there's 2 to 4 million Bitcoin lost. Nowhere in the white paper does it say blockchain anywhere. It says a distributed timestamp server. That's like a block because it's putting a stamp on a block and saying like this happened at this time and the proof of work was completed to add this block. And so I would say in terms of like the traders and the cryptocurrency, crypto bros that are trying to jump through all these hoops and do all these things to outperform Bitcoin, like it's to no avail.
Bitcoiners are getting almost like the Bitcoin notion is getting more mainstream because people are getting inflation. People are getting more and more. Oh yeah, money system is kind of, there's something weird with it. And now, yeah, but I still get a lot of craziness. Like if I tell people about Bitcoin but it gets more and more accepted. Like the fact that like
kind of like who you're talking to as well. Like you're just talking to like the average person who is in a bunch of debt and they don't really know anything about investing and they don't even know what the heck the Federal Reserve is. They don't understand that like the government can just print money. Then they're going to have like this off the cuff response to you like, oh, you're crazy. But now we're to the point where all of the suits are involved. Wall Street is involved. A bunch of publicly traded companies are involved. The biggest nation in the world, most powerful nation in the world, announced the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So anybody that like has a pulse on any of that, they understand that, okay, there's something here. Bitcoin is not just going to be going to zero as like a lot of smart investors used to say a couple of years ago. And so now it's something where like, if they're sophisticated in terms of like, they understand what's going on, like from a macro perspective, then they're not going to give you that like scoff at, oh, he's doing some like crypto scam.
It might be better in America than in Europe. I feel like in America, it's already more developed because in America, politicians are talking more about it. People are in general more educated on it. The grassroots movement is more, a lot of more companies around Bitcoin are in America. I mean, all my partners in the podcast are all American except one. So like it's just a clear indicator. And I'm European, like I'm European and I almost only work with Americans. It's like the internet, like all the big companies are from America. It's happening all over again. Europe is sleeping again, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think eventually we'll get to that point where like every country that is under a fiat currency regime, like all of their citizens, assuming they have, a decent IQ, they're going to catch on to Bitcoin and they're going to start saving in Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see how it goes because like the European Central Bank, I mean, the euro right now is probably stronger than the dollar, but a lot of people, the other thing too to consider is like, if you have access to the US banking system, you would think that it would take you longer to catch on to Bitcoin because like we have access to the world reserve currency and that's like a level of stability, which a lot of investors have. Whereas like if you're living in Argentina or Zimbabwe, where like overnight your currency can get debased by 50%, then you would be much more inclined to be learning about things like Bitcoin and be adopting Bitcoin and be using Bitcoin, which like, if you listen to Alex Gladstein, that's like a lot of what he talks about is like we are privileged in the United States of America and in places where you have access to like the global banking system, then like you're privileged to be able to have access to a bank account, but 40% of the world is unbanked. They can't even use a bank account. So how does somebody in like a small village in Africa send money to their family in the United States or their family in Europe? It's very difficult. And that's like one of the problems that Bitcoin solves, obviously.
We already started in the podcast without really starting in the podcast.
Yeah.
But before we get started with all the topics, maybe you give the viewers and the listeners some background of like who you are and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah, no. Just some background on myself. I didn't find Bitcoin until probably around 2019, 2020, I would say. and it was like anybody who was like paying attention to, I guess, crypto at that time, they had heard like Coinbase was like the most popular app in the App Store, and it was just like a lot of crypto mania. I had a couple friends who they had made like millions of dollars trading crypto, and they had bought some token and it had gone up a bunch, and it was just like a mania like around right before, yeah, the 2019 2020 is when the government gave out those stimulus checks, and people just they were sitting in their homes, they had nothing to do because of all the COVID shutdowns, and it was just like absolute mania at that time. That was when I first heard about it. And I wasn't like I didn't immediately see that like Bitcoin was the only thing to really be paying attention to. And so I got involved with a lot of just the crypto crap coins out there. Like I don't even want to mention them just because they're so garbage. But I mean, a lot of it was just like you get caught up in that like get rich quick thing, and you just want to make a quick buck, and that's like the enticement there. And I had never been like super interested in investing or really like economics or any of that. I mean, I came from like a sports background, and at the time I was playing basketball at a small uh, Christian college in the middle of Montana, and like I obviously was starting to think about like what am I going to do for my career, and how am I going to make money. And that was like, I think the whole crypto thing, when you first hear about it, you start to think about the whole, like the financial system as a whole and what is money. And that was like, that's the question that gets a lot of people, is you start to look into like, if you're going to be investing in these cryptocurrencies, like you should at least know something about it. And so you start to see all the resources that are out there, and like, why does this thing have value? Why are people paying for this? And then like you start to get a little bit deeper, dig a little bit deeper, and then you start to like understand the macro picture of like what is the dollar, how is the dollar created, why are people buying these cryptocurrencies. And then from there, I think that was like what sparked it. And then it probably wasn't until 2021 that this was right around the time that El Salvador announced Bitcoin as a legal tender. And me and my buddy were just like, hey, let's go check it out. Like, this seems like it would be a cool trip. And I had seen some things on Twitter of people that have been there. And like around the time, this is like right after Bukele came in, and they like previously with a highest murder rate per capita in the world. So all my family was saying like, no, don't go, like, don't do that. And I was like, it's fine. Like, we're going to like the safe area, the El Tunco, like Bitcoin beach spot. And so we went there, and I ran into a bunch of Bitcoin maxis there, and I was like trying to talk to them about all the crypto stuff, and they were like, no, like, stop. Like, you should only be paying attention to Bitcoin. And like, I was like, oh, really? And they started like explaining some things to me about it, like why Bitcoin was different than everything else. And that was, I think, like when it first got in my head. And then from there was like, I started following all the Bitcoin maxis on Twitter, and reading all the stuff that they were writing. And it was at that point that I was like, oh, this is like going, whatever. You have the epiphany of like, this is like a technology that is going to change the world. And the whole fiat currency bubble is a massive problem. And you read the Bitcoin Standard, which is like, a lot of people tell you to read that first. I wouldn't necessarily recommend somebody to read that first, because I mean, Seyf is phenomenal in the way that he articulates it, from like where we started to how Bitcoin is the solution. But for many people, that's just like not the best resource to start with. But it gives you the context, as opposed to like, we used to be on a gold standard, and now we're not. It's been a 50-year fiat currency experiment, and it's degrading society, and a lot of the problems that we have in life and food, the medical medicine for people, and obviously like unemployment and jobs, and the mental health overall of society. I mean, you could just, the architecture, like if you just look at how lower quality our architecture is now, a lot of it's just caused from fiat currency debasement. And you go down that hole, and then you realize Bitcoin is a solution, and all you want to do is spend your time studying Bitcoin and how you can help accelerate the adoption of this technology. And that was where I started. This was probably as a sophomore in college. And then from there, it was Bitcoiner jobs. I was applying to every single job on Bitcoiner jobs, like trying to work at Swan. That was like the apex of Bitcoin companies, I feel like, at the time, which fortunately that didn't work out, because they had all those layoffs shortly after. But I started with DCA Signals, which I don't know if you know Lee is. He's done a lot of stuff with like the bitcoinnews.com. But I was doing stuff with him, and that was just like a good experience to. I did a lot of writing, like writing articles and stuff, and then from there, it was the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association, which they're still around, but they did a lot of policy development for companies. They were based in Oklahoma, but we passed 2 bills in the state of Oklahoma for the right to self-custody and another mining bill. And I wrote a newsletter to a bunch of senators that they had on their list for them. And then from there, I became just as I got more involved in Bitcoin and I wanted to accumulate as much Bitcoin as I possibly could, I wanted to start mining Bitcoin. That was like, and I'm sure many Bitcoin maxis, like they come to that threshold where they're like, they understand Bitcoin and then they understand mining. And then they understand that like, well, there must be some sort of advantage to people mining Bitcoin. You have a lower cost basis than the people that are just buying Bitcoin on exchanges. And so then you ask yourself, well, how can I start like accumulating Bitcoin through mining? And for me, that was like, well, can I mine in my house? And it's like, well, no, not really. If you want to profitably mine, you need to buy like thousands of dollars worth of machines, and you need to have 220 volts in your house. And it's just not very, they're super loud. They generate a bunch of heat. You get past that. And you're like, well, that's not necessarily going to work for my small apartment. And then you get into like, you hear all the cloud mining. I mean, you really got to do a lot of due diligence and research to like vet some of the stuff that's out there, because a lot of it's just a lot of fluff, and you're not exactly like, you can get burned really easily. And that's the story of like a lot of people that have tried to go down that rabbit hole is they get burned by getting into some sort of like scammy mining investment, and then they end up with less Bitcoin than they could have had just buying it the normal dollar cost average way. So fast forward, I found out about simple mining through River. I used River as one of my exchanges, and I think that they used to do hosted mining, and then they ended up phasing that out, and now we partner with them. So anybody that wants to ask River about hosted mining, they send them in our direction, simple mining. That was when I first heard about simple mining, and then started out as a client, got my first S21. That was probably, I think, January of 2024. So it was right before the 2024 halving in April. But I got the S21. That was like the new machine at the time, the brand new one. And probably like a month in, I started just like, I had all these questions. Like I wanted to read some in-depth material on mining versus buying Bitcoin, like a comparison report of like the data between the two and portfolio allocation. And it was something that I just was like, I had all these questions and there was no material out there for them to be answered. And so that was when I had a conversation with Nick, who's our COO, and was like, hey, I have all these questions. You guys don't have any content or material on this. Like, why don't I just help you guys create it? And that was where it started. Was I started writing a bunch of research reports for them and articles for, they didn't really have any newsletter at the time, but fast forward to now, my title is director of research, but I do, anything from like content and emails to podcasts, partnerships, or conferences. I do a lot of conferences, stuff like this, going on podcasts and talking and educating clients is a lot of what I do, but it's very enjoyable because I get to spend a lot of time researching Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining specifically, and then distilling that into information for people that were where I used to be. Because like ultimately, like as a creator, you're not creating content necessarily for like someone at square zero or someone that's like way ahead of you. You're creating content for someone that's like 2 steps behind you. That's like when you create the best content, it's like for yourself 2 years ago, where you were at and the questions that you had and the pain points that you had in trying to understand something. That's the best approach to have. And since, I started our Substack, we have over 8,000 subscribers there, and I try to write a weekly piece on that every single week. But yeah, that's the story of how I got to where I am now.
I love that. Really nice. And it's that there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
I find it interesting, your story with Bitcoin Maxis, because if you are on the Bitcoin Maxi, Bitcoin maxes can be quite annoying, but they
Yeah.
seem to be right in the long run.
Yeah.
And I hope I can call myself also a Bitcoin maxi. At least I'm Bitcoin only and only doing Bitcoin stuff. But the what qualifies as a Bitcoin maxi and what doesn't seems to change also from week to week. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's me. Not that's not me. So I just call myself Bitcoin only. That's super interesting how you got through that and how do you see it? What would you call yourself a Bitcoin maxi? How would you define that?
Well, I think there's levels to it. There's like the toxic Bitcoin maxi, and then there's all the way. I mean, there's definitely certain categories because you see people that are obviously bullish on Bitcoin and they understand like the macro thesis of like all fiat currencies are dying. Bitcoin is going to be the base layer for global money. Like that's the base case. So there's a lot of people that understand that, and then there's the people that are like I would say the toxic maxis, where they understand that and they think that if you're allocating to anything else besides what's ultimately going to be the base layer of money for society, then you're stupid. And at this point in time and at the rate of adoption that we currently have, it's going to outperform anything and everything else. And if you're wasting your time investing in anything else, then you're dumb and you don't actually understand what Bitcoin is. And so that would be like the max level 10 of Bitcoin maxi. And then there's like I would say the level of people that are somewhat traditional finance like background and they manage portfolios and they understand portfolio allocation and they understand risk management and all of these different things. And so maybe they have all of these buckets and they want to they have a certain bucket that's for Bitcoin, but then they also have the Bitcoin treasury companies and they have all of Bitcoin derivatives and they have their stocks that they like and they understand why Bitcoin's going to be successful, but they're not fully ported, so to speak. And so I would say there's those people, and I mean it's probably a mix between the two. And then you have like I think there's a all the way to like level one would be somebody that's still messing around with like XRP and all of the other cryptocurrencies out there where they think like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's number one, it's the best, but there's all these second bests that are out there, these unregistered securities, and they're gonna potentially like outperform Bitcoin, and then I can swap back into Bitcoin, and like that would probably be similar like to the traders where they're trying to trade Bitcoin, where it's like, oh well, I'm gonna time the top and be able to sell it at the top and then buy it back at the bottom, and then continue to do that and end up with more Bitcoin. Like there's all those people that they understand the bull case for Bitcoin and why it's going to be successful in the long term, but they're stuck up on all these like hiccups that like only less than 5% of people are successful doing those things. And it's like the people that win, that probably do the best as a Bitcoin maximalist in the long run, they're either dead or they went to jail. Like the Hal Finney, he had a bunch of Bitcoin and then he passed away, and he still has all of his Bitcoin. Whatever his Bitcoin wallet is, he's never sold it. And then you have the Ross Ulbrichts, they went to jail and they had a bunch of Bitcoin and they couldn't access it, and they couldn't touch it. And 20 years later, they come out of jail and they still have the Bitcoin. And so I would say in terms of like the traders and the cryptocurrency crypto bros that are trying to jump through all these hoops and do all these things to outperform Bitcoin, like it's to no avail.
It's a good thing, and I like the reasonable approach of like their Bitcoin will be the best performing asset, but there are two things in my opinion that will be a uh, better return on investment usually on average for you. That's like investing in your own knowledge and skills. That's like a hard thing for you to beat because this will give you more power to DCA more Bitcoin. And then obviously, I mean, that's kind of related to each other, but investing in your own company or career or like whatever you have going. Those are the only two things that I see have a very reasonable and very realistic chance of actually outperforming Bitcoin. Outside of that, I don't know. There's not a lot. Maybe you find some interesting angel investment, or you find some interesting
I mean, yeah, it's all
crazy stock.
timeline too. Like in the short term, in the next month, there's going to be some penny stock or something out there that's going to outperform Bitcoin. But in the long run, like if you look at any chart over since 2009, priced in Bitcoin, it's down and to the right. And so I think that's like, yeah, it is difficult to come out. Like Michael Saylor obviously thinks that his strategy is going to be something that outperforms Bitcoin just because of the leverage. I mean, what's better than Bitcoin is more Bitcoin. Is that what he is? That's what he says. And so I'm sure people have many different thoughts about what they think about that, and if that's going to be the case. Is a company that buys a bunch of Bitcoin going to be able to, I guess, in dollar terms, perform better than Bitcoin itself? And that's something to think about. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like, money is just a tool and it's a means to an end. And it's something to be able to think about, prepare for your future, preserve your wealth, uh, be able to have a plan for your family and your loved ones, and that's like ultimately what it comes down to. And like, yes, it's the best investment in terms of protecting yourself from fiat debasement and the erosion of your purchasing power. And that's why I think Bitcoin maxis are so passionate about it, because that's like what it represents. Is it represents an ending of the theft that comes from central banking, and a solution that's based off math, and it's not going to cheat and steal from you.
But even Sailor, I like that example, because I think even Sailor likes Bitcoin. I just quickly asked ChatGPT. There's only in 2024, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times where he sold MSTR shares. And guess what he bought with that? Like, I don't know, but it's private. But I would be highly surprised if he didn't buy Bitcoin.
Are you saying him personally?
Yeah, he personally sells shares, and it has been disclosed. I think it was popular a few months ago, or maybe like half a year ago, where he sold shares, and it's like a public record of like multiple times where he sold strategy to buy privately Bitcoin. And he himself also says, what I think he said on multiple podcasts, that he prefers buying Bitcoin directly. So it's really interesting. Even the guy himself is like, yeah, like Bitcoin is the thing. And obviously he likes his stocks, and he holds a bunch of strategy. But it's interesting because he never bought more strategy stocks. He always bought more Bitcoin and sold some strategy stock.
Well, I suppose that's the position that like his company takes as well, because strategy doesn't do stock buybacks. They don't just buy a bunch of strategy stock. They hit the market, they at the market, sell more, issue more equity, and they buy more Bitcoin. And so like, if Michael Saylor was a company, it would be strategy, buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can.
Absolutely. But I want to get back to Bitcoin mining, and it's such an interesting thing because you research deeply and you know a lot about Bitcoin mining. We've talked, I think, like 2-3 times at this point already, and I'm fascinated by Bitcoin mining, and I'm slowly coming into Bitcoin mining more and more. And I was also mining myself now, thanks to you. You really got me started with Bitcoin mining also. But what is one thing that you think most Bitcoiners really don't understand about Bitcoin mining, that you see most of the times as you speak probably with a lot of Bitcoiners and see what they understand and also what they might lack?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the main thing would be just like glossing over what Bitcoin mining actually is. And like, if you look up like what is Bitcoin mining as like a simple Google search, you'll see a bunch of articles that attempt to explain it. And the consensus response that you'll get is like, Bitcoin mining is solving complex math problems to validate Bitcoin transactions and secure the blockchain. It's like a very word salady, jargon filled response of like, you tell that to most people and they're just going to be like, what the heck are you talking about? And that's actually something that, like, I recently was at this conference in Texas, and it was a traditional, it was for alternative financial freedom through alternative investments was like the theme of the conference. And so it had a lot of real estate investors there, and gold investors, and private equity, and all of these different like companies and individuals and investors that were there. And we had a booth there, and we were the only like Bitcoin mining related company that was there. And I was probably asked that question from everywhere from like a boomer to just like a traditional finance guy to like a 10-year-old. There were some younger kids there, and just like, tell me about Bitcoin mining. Like, what is Bitcoin mining? And it made me think about. I mean, after I've answering it hundreds of times, it's made me really think about like what is the best way to explain this to people in a way that's just not going to like estrange them and make this technology seem like it's this super complicated thing when it's really not. Like ultimately, Bitcoin mining, I mean, there's two things. There's like Bitcoin mining, the process, and then there's Bitcoin mining, like what is a Bitcoin miner doing? And you're taking a machine and you're plugging it in, and the machine is consuming energy and it's looking for a number in a very large set, and the machine is getting rewarded with Bitcoin. Like that's ultimately what a Bitcoin miner is doing. And then it's not like people say, well, Bitcoin miners are trying to solve these complex math problems. It's not. There's not really anything complicated about it. It's a computer that's generating trillions of lottery tickets. That's trying to find a number in a very large set, and that's like there's no complicated math. I mean, it's doing that through hashes, generating hashes, taking a block and all of the information that's in a block and generating a hash of that, and then that's going to generate the number. And depending on how many leading zeros it has, it's either going to be the right number, the nonce, but no below the nonce value, and it's going to win the block, or it's not. I mean, the majority of the time, it's going to be below that. Like I wrote a thread last week, and it was on this concept, but it was like putting the scale of Bitcoin mining in perspective. It would be like trying to find one specific grain of sand on the beaches of 10,000 Earth-like planets. That's like the number that all the Bitcoin mining machines in the world, they're looking for one grain of sand on the beaches of 10,000 Earth-like planets. Like, or choosing one specific star. I mean, it's hard to quantify because we don't know exactly how many stars there are, but it would be like choosing one specific star from all of the stars in the observable universe, or flipping a coin 79 times and getting heads every single time. It's like people don't understand the scale of like, there's millions of these machines all across the world that are just generating trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of guesses to like, why are they doing this? Why are they generating these guesses to try to win a block? Well, part of the reason is like they have the monetary incentive. If you win a block, you get 3.125 Bitcoin. And I would say like the purpose of Bitcoin, the number one purpose, and I got this from Bob Burnett. He's a great resource and wealth of knowledge when it comes to Bitcoin mining. And as I started to like dig down the hole, like I would say Rob Warren, who wrote the Bitcoin Miners Almanac, and Bob Burnett, who's the CEO of Barefoot Mining, they have just the level of their understanding of Bitcoin mining is like 1% of 1% of 1%. Like the majority of the planet has no idea what the heck Bitcoin is. And then the people that think they do, who say like the blockchain verifying transactions, they have just like a very surface level. And then the people that like created Bitcoin and really understand what the heck is going on, that's just like a very small subset of people. And it's difficult to find like high quality educational information out there on those topics. But I think, getting back to the primary purpose of Bitcoin mining would be like adding blocks, like generating and producing blocks. Because if there's no blocks that are getting added to the chain of blocks, which Satoshi in the white paper calls the timestamp server, there's no mention of blockchain in the white paper. I'm not sure if you knew that, but there's nowhere in the white paper does it say blockchain anywhere. It says a distributed timestamp server. And so that's like a block, because it's putting a stamp on a block and saying like this happened at this time and the proof of work was completed to add this block. And then and what's inside of a block is just a data container for transactions. If I send Bitcoin to you, it's going to get propagated by nodes, and eventually it's going to get added to a block and confirmed on the chain, because the chain you can't edit the chain, you can't change the chain because of how much proof of work is associated with it. And that is the number one purpose of Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin mining, is to add blocks. And then people say, well, that sounds stupid. Why is this important? Isn't this a waste of energy? Like, who cares about adding this magic internet money in these blocks and connecting these blocks and maintaining this super long chain? Well, it's a universal principle of proof of work. And people have, what the computers are technically doing is not the difficult part. People have a hard time understanding the stark difference from like the traditional fiat financial system, where money can just be created out of nothing and requires no proof of work to produce the money, versus mining, which requires you to provide proof you did the work to confirm the integrity of these Bitcoin transactions. Like that is the main reason why these miners are adding these blocks, is they are required to consume the energy because it enforces the security integrity of Bitcoin as a monetary network. And I think that's like, once you can grasp that and you can see that, like, if I wanted to cheat Bitcoin and I wanted to double spend and I wanted to try to attack the network, then I would need to redo all of the work that miners have already done thus far and are currently doing right now. And I would need to outpace them in the work that they're generating trillions and trillions and trillions of guesses. And the only way that they can do that is by plugging in a machine, consuming real world energy, which is what backs Bitcoin. People say Bitcoin is backed by nothing. It's backed by those millions of miners generating trillions of guesses, consuming megawatts, gigawatts, energy that you can't even comprehend how much energy they're consuming. And they're doing that to secure this chain.
It's super interesting because a lot of people have different notions around what Bitcoin mining is. I recently learned, by the way, Bob Burnett was already 2 times on the show. And the last time he was on the show, I learned that Bitcoin miners can opt out of getting the reward if they find a block.
Why there's not 4 million Bitcoin, actually.
Yeah, like and he said, like there's already
like 12 blocks or something that the reward wasn't claimed,
which is really interesting. I've never heard that. and he just told me, I think, I don't know, a month or 2 months ago. And I was like, wait, what? The cap is actually not 21 million? That's crazy.
Yeah, which it's easy to just say 21 million. But I think it's just because the template wasn't set up correctly when like they constructed the template. They didn't set it up to like have the block subsidy go to their Bitcoin address. And so, I mean, when people say that's lost Bitcoin, that would be an example of it, of a block subsidy that was never claimed. Which it will be interesting on the lost Bitcoin thing. Like what a River, I think, estimates that there's 2 to 4 million Bitcoin lost. It will be, I think I would take the perspective that a significant portion of that will not be lost, because I think in our lifetime, eventually there will be some sort of computer that will be able to access those coins. And I mean, I don't have like the in-depth technical understanding of how exactly that would work, but there's already, like, I don't know if you saw that guy, he created that web tool of like checking your Bitcoin address to see if it could get messed up by a quantum miner in the next like foreseeable future. And so that's like another thing to think about, but side topic.
Yeah, this is a whole nother topic where like this quantum threat is real. It's just a matter of question, like when really is it real? And I'm really not a good, I'm not technically good enough to even say anything on the topic. But if I ask the robots or like the AI a lot, if I ask people that actually have an understanding of that, most people tell me it's almost no concern in the next 5 years. There's a small concern in the next 10 years. And then the concern gets exponentially bigger as time goes on, 15, 20, 30 years. So it's not an immediate problem, but it is a problem that we as a Bitcoin community will face at some point.
Yeah. And it's not just the Bitcoin community. It's like all modern cryptography and SHA-256. That's like, you're going to have to make the upgrade. And that was like, I think like last week or something, Elon Musk commented under a post and he asked Grok, like, when is like the modern cryptography going to be broken? And it was saying like not anytime soon, but like in the 5 to 10 year range is when we should start preparing to make an update. And that's like the nice thing about software systems is they're dynamic and you can upgrade when a new technology comes out that will threaten the viability of the existing technology, is that it can upgrade, and Bitcoin Core can implement a new version that, or I guess not, if that's your preference. They could Luke Dasher could update the code to make it quantum resistant. Like, I think we already have a Bitcoin improvement proposal that's pay to quantum resistant hash, and like there's developers that are currently working on it. I am not deep in the weeds on making Bitcoin quantum resistant, but I know that very smart people are working on that. And Like the banking system is going to have to do it. I mean, if you just look at a lot of I think it's Bank of America. If you just go to their website and try to use their interface, like a lot of their software is like really outdated and difficult to use. And like, granted, there's a lot of Bitcoin software out there that's not Bitcoin specifically, but third-party tools like Bitcoin exchanges and things like that that are not easy to use. But I mean, the companies that would be best positions will be the ones that have the best developer team, and they're going to upgrade it, and they're going to integrate the new and the best solutions. And so that will be what happens. But it will be interesting. Like, will there be a PSA on Twitter of, okay, everybody, next week we're migrating over. Everybody needs to like send their Bitcoin to the new quantum resistant address, like assuming they're not just holding it on an exchange.
It will be a bigger drama than we think, I think, because we already see, and I mean, core versus nodes is already a window into that, where a small thing can split the Bitcoin community into half. And if we have a big thing coming, like the quantum thing, where we have to make an upgrade, I think nobody will argue that we don't need to upgrade. But people might argue on how to implement it. And there will be probably, I don't know, 2-3 main proposals that people will argue on. And it will be really interesting. I'm looking forward to that, because this will be a time where you probably see a debate every other day. And I'm already looking forward to hosting them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it will be interesting to see if it's similar to like the block size wars, which I was not around for that, but I remember going to like one of my first Bitcoin meetups, and there was some guy, he worked at Microsoft and built their whole like Xbox online gaming system basically. And he was like, had a bunch of GPUs from that, and was like, at the time, it was like a hash rate war. Like whichever side had like the higher hash rate, it was like crazy, where he was just trying to get as many miners online as he possibly could. And it seemed like it was like a crazy thing, because these were obviously two sides in extreme opposition, where it was like the big blockers who were like, let's just blow the top off this and make these blocks massive. And then the people that were saying, no, this is going to destroy Bitcoin, like you shouldn't do that. And then it was just like the longest chain wins, which now we know obviously Bitcoin Cash has negligible proof of work and will probably go to zero. I mean, there'll probably still be Roger Ver using it forever, but we know who won in the end.
I do love the watches from Coin Vigilante, but today I have a very special message, not from me, but from the CEO himself, Carlos from Coin Vigilante. Let's hear him.
To all the Robin Seyr podcast community, I'm Carlos Estrada from Coin Vigilante, and we're sponsors of the show, and we're going to give you a very special discount exclusive to you. 10% off your order at coinvigilante.com when you use Robin at checkout. We have really nice watches that you guys can buy right now for 10%. This is a transparency edition, beautiful watch. These watches are worn in over 55 countries and counting. This discount is just for you, exclusive to the Robin Seyr podcast. We have limited editions, we have limited productions. These watches come in very nice packaging, boxing material, and they are collector's item for Bitcoiners only. Enjoy the discount. Thanks for supporting the show and Coin Vigilante.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. And we have right now a summer sale going on for 15% off. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today for $186. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
Yeah, the free market showed how small people, and this was really interesting when you look at the chart in the beginning, Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin, it was like up and down massively. And there were times, even like a week afterwards, where Bitcoin Cash was 50% up against Bitcoin. We are like, oh wait, maybe this Bitcoin Cash thing is actually winning. But now, years afterwards, what is it, 2017, this is now 8 years. Oh gosh, that's 8 years. that went quick. 8 years already gone. And now it's very clear that this community just lost. Like it's the free market has decided. Like it's a very easy debate.
Well, it was interesting. Like I remember looking this up not that long ago about like I was curious if Bitcoin Cash hash rate was actually ever larger than like Bitcoin, the Bitcoin we know now, that hash rate. And I think it was like somewhat skewed because of like they had like a weird difficulty adjustment. Like the way that they had the difficulty adjustment set up was like making it seem like it was actually bigger. But then once they fixed that, because it was like blocks were happening like way too fast, they had to update it. And then like it basically that was the nail in the coffin, and it plummeted. But it was great for all the guys that like you were getting double Bitcoin. You were getting for each block, you could get the Bitcoin that we know now and like the Bitcoin Cash. And he was just saying like I was just dumping all of my Bitcoin Cash to get more Bitcoin because you're getting both the block subsidies.
It was a clever decision from him afterwards. Let's talk about Bitcoin mining, and I'm really interested in especially for the viewers that listen now and they don't mine currently, and I think most people don't mine that I listen to that. Why they should mine, and I want to tackle that with two different lenses. The first is kind of the holistic, the ethical case of like why should we care about the mining aspect of it, and then later I want to go to the financial aspect where you already said like in the beginning when you researched you like buying Bitcoin versus mining Bitcoin. So like from an ethical standpoint, holistic standpoint, like why should someone care about mining Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, I would say the main thing that you'd want to think about is if you care. I mean, one of the main ethos, like the main ethos of Bitcoin would be like decentralization. Like they don't want central planning. They want decentral planning. They want the plans of the network to be controlled by the nodes, which there are over 20,000 nodes. And nodes aren't the only economic actor in Bitcoin. Obviously, there's the Bitcoin miners, the hashers, so to speak. So the machines that are generating those hashes to add these blocks, and not only that, but the block templates, designing the template for what is going to go into the block. That's another important thing to consider. Is it's a powerful thing to have that control in the network. And you see a lot of these, like Marathon, for example, they're a big miner and they don't do a pool. They do all the block templates themselves, and they have these things like Slipstream where they can customize the block in a certain way. Like, I'm sure if you look on mempool.space, you can see the blocks where they made an advertisement where it was like a big M, or they made a block that was like a picture of Trump. And the way that they're doing that is they're cherry picking transactions to put them and construct the block and then add that block to the chain. And then that raises the concern of like, well, what happens if there's 2 or 3 companies that control the majority of blocks being produced and the hash rate associated with that? Then what happens if they want to blacklist a certain address, or there's a certain country that they want to sanction them and they want to say like, no, you can't relay any transactions. Like, we're going to block you. We're not going to include that in a block. You're going to have to wait years and years and years and years to try to get in a block. And if they're adding the majority of the blocks, we'll just say 99% of the blocks that are getting created are by 3 companies, then that is a centralization concern. And that's like not going back to the block size, like that was their concern, was that if the block size was bigger, then it was going to be more. Yeah, there's the example right there, is it was going to be more expensive to run a node, which was going to centralize it. And look, just right up there, you see Foundry, Marathon, Antpool. I mean, you could even go to their chart. Like if you just hit on the pickaxe on the top, and this isn't like a fully accurate chart, but they have a nice, like, you go to mempool.space, and this is like the distribution, that pie chart, that if you have been in Bitcoin for a while, like you probably have seen this chart before. And what does it show? It shows that via BTC, Antpool, and Foundry have over 50% of the network hash rate. And so they can add over half the blocks that are mined are coming from those 3 entities. And it's actually worse than that, because Antpool is only represented as, what is it right now? 20 something percent? 17%.
Yeah, 17%. Yeah.
It's actually like via BTC is the backstop for Antpool is the backstop for via BTC, F2 pool, Spider pool, Luxor. I mean, all of those other smaller pools on there are just proxies of Antpool and ultimately Bitmain. And so what you have is you have Foundry and you have Antpool. They, as far as like the blocks that are being created by 2 entities. 75% of the blocks, let's just say, are being created by 2 entities. And so that should, like, as a Bitcoin maxi and as somebody who believes in the ethos of something that's like a distributed network that is controlled by the majority and is distributed, and there's thousands of economic actors that are enforcing the policy and what goes into blocks, then that's not what the current situation is. And so then you have to ask yourself, well, how do we fix that? And there is a lot of ways. I mean, I have not dug into it as deep as some other people like Bob, for example, have, but it's multi-layered, because you have the chip manufacturing and the chip fabrication and the system design. All of that is closed source. And so it's very difficult for like a mining company to spin up and start creating their own machines and offer this as a service to the marketplace and for investors to switch over to them. Like, it's basically Bitmain creates the majority of the machines that are out there. You have MicroBT, but they're also closed source. And so you have like 2 major manufacturers that are creating the machines. And then you have the pools, which you have the 2 main pools. You have the Foundry and you have the Antpool. And the reason why they have so much hash rate is just because a pool is ultimately like an insurance solution. So you're contributing your hash to that pool so that you can get consistent rewards, because you don't want to have to deal with the volatility and the variability that is, like, let's just say if you're a solo miner and you only have like an exahash, we'll just say, or even less than that, and you're mining to try to find these blocks, and let's just say you get unlucky or a month goes by and you don't hit any blocks, then you still have to pay that electricity bill, but you have no revenue because you didn't hit any blocks. And so that's like the perfect recipe to go bankrupt. And so that's why the majority of hashers on the planet they are subscribing to these pools, and the pools are doing much more than just managing the payouts. They're managing a lot of like accounting things. They're managing a lot of compliance things for these pools. Like maybe it's a publicly traded company and they don't want to have like, let's just say that there's a transaction that gets added to a Bitcoin block and it was for nukes or whatever. It comes up in a case that this transaction was for this good or service, and that company doesn't want to be held liable. So they just work with Antpool or they work with Foundry to manage all of that for them. So there's a lot of these things that are going on where these pools are providing much more than just managing the payouts to these miners. And so that's how they've been able to amass such a large amount of hash rate, and the fact that they're all backstopped by Bitmain. Because if you try to run just spin up your own smaller pool, then you're going to have a lot of issues as far as like potentially getting attacked or somebody trying to take advantage of your pool by block withholding, something like that. Then you could end up getting wrecked. And so it's just much easier for them to just go with the easy button and mine to Antpool or Foundry and just get the consistent Bitcoin rewards. Now, that is how we've gotten to the current situation to where we're at. 99%, and this is what I'm talking about, this Antpool and this Foundry, is this method that they're using to pay out miners is full pay per share. They're based on the estimated block subsidy, which I mean is 3.125, and based on the estimated transaction fees, and then they do this black box math on the average. They remove the 3 highest blocks and the 3 lowest blocks in terms of block reward. They do some math and they come up with this number to pay out miners based off their shares. So it's not very transparent. It's very opaque. So that's full pay per share. And then you have something that's basically 99% of Bitcoin mining is going based off of that. And then you have Ocean, which they're starting to gain some more traction. But they're basically a version of PPLNS, which is pay per last N shares. They're only paying out miners based off the blocks that are actually being won by the pool. It's not just like a fixed amount that they guarantee to pay you no matter what, regardless of blocks are won. And it's somewhat, they're very contrarian in the sense where like they are trying to combat against this mining centralization concern that a lot of people are freaking out about. And they're very small. They make up 2%, maybe less than 2% in terms of like the hash rate that is subscribed to their pool in the big picture of all of the Bitcoin mining pools. And that's like the current best solution, I would say, would be something like that. And the reason that they're the best solution is that they're not doing all of the stuff that these other pools are doing. They're paying when you sign up for Ocean, you don't have to create an account. You don't have to send in your email address, your social security number, your driver's license. You don't have to do all this stuff. You just give them a Bitcoin address, and you can create the template how you want. So if you're running the Datum gateway, then you can design the template. Like maybe you want to run Bitcoin knots and you want to filter out all of the transactions that are monkey JPEGs, and you only want monetary, or however you want to construct the block template. You have the sovereignty to do so. So that's giving more power back to the users, which is very much what Bitcoin was designed to do. And then you get paid out directly from the block subsidy. So the Coinbase that outlines 3.125 is going to the person that added this block to the chain. Then that gets distributed amongst all of in that window, however many miners contributed a certain amount of shares in that window, they're getting a certain amount of Bitcoin directly from that block. It's not some ambiguous pool wallet that's going to send you some transaction just based off your shares. So that's one of the other benefits. And it just gives miners more, like it gets miners back to what they originally were. Because if you look at what miners originally were, everything was the same in terms of a Bitcoin node, a Bitcoin miner, and a Bitcoin wallet. It was all like the Bitcoin core application that you were running. And so that was like a miner and a node at that time was essentially the same thing. But now it's got abstracted, where a miner is now just a hasher. They're just generating hashes. And then you have all the nodes, and most of the pools are run by a pool node. So they're actually controlling what's going into the chain. And then you have obviously the wallets that have been abstracted as well. but it's a much different situation than it originally was. And I would say that it's going to continue to evolve and change into, I think, having more individual entities that like almost decentralizing the aspects of Bitcoin even more. Like if you take a pool and you pull out the compliance aspect and you have all these companies that are managing the compliance aspect, and then you pull out the accounting aspect and you have all these companies that are managing the accounting aspect, and then you have managing the payouts from the blocks to the miners, that's another entity that's running that. And so the more of these like smaller entities that you have that are contributing, it's just spreading out the centralization, it's decentralizing it, because there's smaller entities and economic actors that are involved in this like bigger picture. And so there's not a single point of failure or somebody that you could go talk to and say, hey, I want you to do this to mess up Bitcoin, and they would have the power to do so.
It's such a great case, and you make actually a great. You lay it out amazingly, like from starting in the beginning and seeing what's the problem and kind of visualizing it. It also shocked me. I don't know, like a year ago and 1.5 years ago, when I really started my Bitcoin mining journey, when I saw how centralized the miners actually are, and where this is a concern, where those miners can potentially conclude and basically censor transaction. They could develop blacklists, whitelists, and all those things. Not saying they will, but like they have the power to do that. If they can put and block the Donald Trump picture, they can exclude you also from the block and just censor the transaction in a way.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that linear, because like, let's just say Marathon decides to exclude all Rob and Sayr's transactions. All the transactions that you relay, the node that you're using is relaying your transaction, and Marathon's just blocking it. We're not picking up that relay. Now, Foundry or some other pool that is actually adding blocks, because you couldn't go to your BitAxe and say, all right, add my transaction BitAxe, because a BitAxe is, the odds of you getting that transaction into the chain is going to take you 100 years. It's going to take you way too long. And so you would need to go to a miner that's not engaging in that. And I think that's why it's like a nuanced risk, because if they did start to do these things that were obviously not good in the best interests of the network, then they don't have physical control of all the hash rate that's pointing to their pool. So all the people that do have physical control of the hash rate that's pointing to their pool, they would say, hey, you guys you're not doing this anymore. I'm pointing somewhere else. They're going to point to Ocean, or they're going to point to a pool that is genuine and they're not doing all this shady stuff. And then they're going to pick up the Rob and Sayr transaction and add it to the chain. And that's the nice thing about like the way the Bitcoin works, is there's not anything like fixed where you can't just like do anything about it. If somebody starts acting like a shady bad actor, then you have the sovereignty and the choice as somebody who has physical control of hash rate to point in another direction. And I think that gets me to like the thing that I like about simple mining so much, is that it gives that power back to people. Because like if you're just like a regular Bitcoin maxi investor and you live in your house, you can't scale to like 1 petahash, 10 petahash. You can't add hash rate at scale. It just doesn't work. Like unless you want to build a data center in your backyard, it's just going to be so much headache, and you have all the other stuff going on in your life that you just can't. You can run your BitAxe, but ultimately your BitAxe isn't solving this problem. Like I just outlined, like the solution is going to be multiple different entities that are adding blocks to the chain. And your BitAxe is never going, I mean, I don't want to say never, but it's going to be like, out of all the BitAxes in the world that are running, it's going to be 3 per year, maybe 2 per year, however many that have won a block this year. But it's just not going to be a practical solution. Whereas like if you're mining with a hosted Bitcoin mining company, like Simple Mining as an example, then we've built out all the infrastructure. We've built out all of the operational complexities that are involved in running one of these machines. And so let's just say like, hey, I don't like these two pools, but I believe in this pool and I think it's good for the future of Bitcoin. So I want to be able to purchase ASIC machines that are going to be generating hashes 90 to 95% of the year, and plug that machine in and point those hashes at the pool that I believe in to give them they're going to start winning more blocks because I believe in their mission and what they're doing. And that's like, from an ethical perspective, I think that's one of the the number one things that we can provide to investors is to be able to have exposure to something like that and be able to do it, because it's very difficult to do it with a little micro nerd miner, or just to do it yourself. I mean, you have to have a lot of capital to be able to, you have to find repair techs, you have to negotiate power purchase agreements. There's just a lot of things that are involved that, like, we've already built all of that and we just offer it to you as a service.
And I love that you have the sovereignty in mind of, like, you can choose which pool. I think you can even connect your own node if as I understand correctly. So
I think we have some of these clients that are running their own datum servers, but we also have like 3 different template versions from the datum gateway that we run as a company, the simple mining one, that you can choose from any of those 3.
Awesome. And now the thing that maybe interests people financially even more, of like, why, if I don't care at all about the decentralization of the network and say, hey, Bitcoin will work out no matter what I do, but can I get more Bitcoin with mining Bitcoin versus just straight out buying Bitcoin? And if so, like, what should be the strategy of, like, what of my portfolio should be mining Bitcoin? Is there any thought, like, maybe first let's answer the question of, like, buying Bitcoin just versus mining Bitcoin in general?
Yeah. I don't think it's one or
a block just got added to the chain. It's super fun to see that. Sometimes I have to running in the background. So super sorry. I was like, unfortunately, I don't have it anymore in the background. It's just so, as a Bitcoiner, I love just like seeing that and the different animations. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a mathematical policy in action. It's a wonderful thing to see. But I would say it's not like people say mine or buy. I wouldn't say it's one or the other. And as a capital allocator and as an investor, you might be all in on one thing. Like, you might be the toxic Bitcoin maximalist that's, I'm on 100% Bitcoin and cold storage. But most people, I would say, are not like that. Like that. They have like their 401k, and they have a couple stocks in their Robinhood account, and maybe they have their Bitcoin in their cold storage, and they have Bitcoin in the IBIT ETF, and they have this portfolio that has certain percentage of allocations, and over time they're balancing that, they're changing these percentage allocations, and so it's like they're actively managing their portfolio. And some of them aren't; they're just delegating that to a financial advisor, which hopefully you got a good one. But I would say that it's not necessarily one or the other. And one of the things that I will say is I am writing a book on this, because in case you've noticed, there's not any like extensive information out there, and maybe even a book or course format of evaluating the concept of mining versus buying Bitcoin. And I think as Bitcoin becomes the global benchmark and hodl rate, and everybody starts to shift from denominating everything in US dollars, which are a terrible unit of account, to denominating everything in Bitcoin terms, Bitcoin as a unit of account, then they're going to start evaluating the performance of different economic actions in Bitcoin terms. And so you are bullish on Bitcoin, and you understand how it's going to become the most desirable asset in the world. And so you want to have a smart accumulation strategy that's going to end you up with as much Bitcoin as you possibly can. And so is that dollar cost averaging on your exchange and paying the fees, or is it buying MicroStrategy and holding MicroStrategy for 5 years, 10 years, and liquidating it back into Bitcoin? Or is it mining? Is it cloud mining? Is it buying some sort of mining derivative and basically renting hash rate and getting a certain amount of Bitcoin from that? Or is it working with a hosted Bitcoin mining company where you purchase an ASIC, you own the ASIC hashes to a pool, and the pool pays you based off of the work that you're contributing to the pool? Now, obviously, it's not any one of these things, and depending on your situation and what your financial goals are and what you're trying to do is what's going to dictate those levels and those allocations. Now, I would say that there are several unique benefits to mining as opposed to just buying Bitcoin. One of the major ones, especially right now, would be the tax benefits, because 100% bonus depreciation is back. If you have a business or any sort of like business entity, an LLC, anything like that, and caveat, I am not a financial advisor or a tax planner. I'm not a CPA, so take all of this with a grain of salt. But if you purchase an ASIC is a physical piece of hardware that you own, like it's your property, whether you buy that through Simple Mining or you buy that from a marketplace or wherever you buy it, that's your property and we're the property managers because, as I mentioned, we have all the operational stuff set up. So you purchase that physical piece of hardware, you run that in one of our data centers, then you can write off 100% of the value of that ASIC machine in the first year. And so you buy $1 million of Bitcoin miners, you decrease your tax burden by $1 million. Now that's very linear. Your tax strategy can get a little bit more nuanced than that, and you can push some buttons and pull some levers to optimize that even more. And that's why we have a partner tax firm that can advise any of our clients on that. But that is we get a lot of people that they wouldn't have bought Bitcoin otherwise. They could, but they hear that, oh, I can purchase these machines that mine Bitcoin for me. I just set it and forget it. I don't even have to worry about it. And I can tremendously decrease the amount of taxes that I'm going to pay at the end of the year. And that's the sole reason why they got into the Bitcoin or started accumulating the Bitcoin in the first place was just because of that. And so, and you buy Bitcoin at Coinbase or River or some exchange, you don't get any tax benefits from doing that at all. You're paying the spot market rate. And that gets into the other major benefit would be at 8 cents per kilowatt hour, just as an example, would be our entry level rate. You can mine $120,000 Bitcoin for $60,000. You're 50% off. You can get a Bitcoin 50% off. Now that's great. That's extremely smart accumulation. And that would be assuming you wouldn't be able to mine one Bitcoin in a day unless you had a lot of machines. You would probably need your own site in order to just as an example, the 50 megawatt hydro site that we're building with Alps blockchain right now, under current market conditions is mining 1.5 Bitcoin per day, roughly. So if you want to mine 1.5 Bitcoin per day, I mean, roughly speaking, this isn't exact, but you would need 50 megawatts, which is thousands of machines. Those are hydro miners, which are extremely powerful. They're generating 395 guesses or more than that, 395 terahash per second, which a terahash I think is over 1 trillion guesses per second. So that's just the scale to give you an idea for it. But I mean, that would be the other benefit would be obviously getting Bitcoin at a discount. You're getting into Bitcoin through an electricity rate. You're paying for electricity to run your machine as opposed to paying the spot market rate on an exchange. Now, the catch there would be you need to purchase the machine. But as I mentioned, whatever, the machine may cost $10,000 or 0.01 Bitcoin or 0.1 Bitcoin, whatever you end up spending on it today. And that machine, if the price of Bitcoin goes up, can become more valuable because as Bitcoin becomes more demanded and more people want Bitcoin and they're willing to pay a higher price, then they're willing to pay a higher price for that machine that's creating Bitcoin. And the downside is true because if there's less demand for Bitcoin and there's less demand for your machine, then the value of that machine is going to go down. And so I think that's just generally why it would make sense to have some sort of allocation to mining. And you have the ethical aspect that we originally mentioned, but there's also thinking in Bitcoin as a unit of account. There's certainly an advantage to have that as a percentage of your Bitcoin accumulation strategy.
I love the points that you brought up, especially with the tax advantages, but also that you could even get in the game of the mining devices and selling them basically for profit even, or just for the base cost that you bought it from, so you don't really lose any of the purchasing power. So it's really interesting when you think about those strategies, because in the first way, as a Bitcoiner, you just buy Bitcoin and you're oh, wow, that's so much better than anything I had. If you just buy Bitcoin, DCA into it, you are outperforming almost everyone. But then there is engine analysts that make weighted buy-ins and all those things. But then in mining, you can kind of diversify in there and maybe even outperform Bitcoin with that. Maybe you have a company and you can use some taxes for that. So those strategies are really interesting because people maybe want to do more than just buy and hold, even though I'm aware
that's a super easy strategy and one that you already serves you. But maybe there's even more that you can do, which also doesn't take up a lot of time. And I feel like I like the aspect of just contributing to ocean a little bit, a lot, and the sovereignty aspect, and voting basically with your Bitcoin.
Yeah. And for many people, like I recently did a webinar with the Bitcoin Way, which like if you care about privacy at all in terms of like your Bitcoin stack, then when you're buying on an exchange, they know that whatever Robin Seyr or Billy Boone he owns this Bitcoin that he bought on the exchange, and you can go on a block explorer and you can trace that anywhere. Now, some people they want like they don't want to have, which is that's KYC laws that are required for exchanges to do that. Let's just say you didn't want Bitcoin or you wanted Bitcoin that wasn't associated with your identity, then you would need to get KYC free Bitcoin. And now, like if you wanted to just get that on a peer-to-peer exchange, or you went on Craigslist and you wanted to try to advertise to buy some Bitcoin from somebody in person, then like one, if you go to a peer-to-peer swap exchange, then it's gonna run at a 15% premium. You're gonna have to pay 15% on average, 5 to 15% more than you would pay on a regular exchange. Or like you're taking the risk of, if you try to do it in person, of something going wrong there. I mean, there's a lot of points of failure. You could get wrench attacked, whatever. There's a lot of things that could go wrong there. But there is a demand out there. The point I'm making is there's a demand out there for privacy-oriented Bitcoin. Depending on the pool that you choose, you can earn privacy-oriented Bitcoin from the pool, because Ocean, for example, they're paying you out directly from a block. So that's only a UTXO output. It's going to your address and it has no history. And so that's like Bob Burnett calls it virgin Bitcoin. It has no history, and it's the most pristine transaction history free Bitcoin you could possibly get.
It's the cleanest, purest form of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Straight from the block.
Straight from the block. I love that. Like a new baby has been born.
Yeah, exactly. A new sap has been birthed into existence.
And you can be the mother or father of it.
Yeah, I mean, you could get weird with it, but that's basically.
Billy, it has been a pleasure. I asked each and every one of my guests the same question. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
What can you learn from me besides Bitcoin? I would say, I mean, if you just go to my Twitter, like a lot of the things that I talk about is mostly Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining stuff. But I think a lot of it's just like ways to live your life in a way that like is good for humanity, because obviously that's related to Bitcoin. Because if you believe in Bitcoin and you understand what Bitcoin represents, then it's good versus evil. Like Bitcoin is good, honest, true money versus fiat, which is bad, lying, stealing money. And that's just related to money, but there's a lot of other things in life that you can do to increase the quality of your life. And at the end of the day, everything's not about money. As I mentioned, money is just a means to an end. It's a tool. And so whether you decide to wake up early or sleep in, or you decide to eat garbage for breakfast and sit on the couch all day and not get any exercise, or not spend time like on your soul and your spirit and reading ancient scripture, or reading something that's going to be good for your life, then you're going to have two different and the relationships that you have. Are you like a kind, good person, or are you a negative person to be around? And do you always complain? And I mean, people find like a way of living their life in a manner that is, they have a good reputation, and people like being around them, and they have positive energy in many different ways. And like, for me, that's getting up early in the morning, and that's praying and reading ancient scriptures, and getting in the gym and working out and working hard and trying to be positive and not complaining anything that I do. And so that comes through in a lot of the things that I talk about, and it's worked for me. Like I'm a human. I've had difficulties in life, and as I started to move in that direction, my quality of life and my relationships and a lot of things just started to work out for better for me. And I'm not going to give that all to Bitcoin. I'm not going to say that the reason why I have been successful and things have worked out for me is because of Bitcoin, but it's a lot of things that are involved in that process. And I think that that's like one of the things that I do really appreciate about Bitcoin is gets people to start asking like deeper questions about life and like, what is the meaning of life and what is my purpose and what am I put on this earth to do here every single day? And usually people end up in a better place than they were before. And I like to talk about those things and the proverbial aspects of life and meaning to things. And a lot of it's philosophical and theological, but it's something that I enjoy. And part of the reason why I'm here today is because I started to dive down that rabbit hole and ask some deeper questions about myself and who I am and why I do the things that I do and how can I change my life to make the world a better place.
I love that. And you see that a lot with Bitcoiners, where once the money is fixed and once they really get the foundation of it, they get to deeper questions, or people that ask deeper questions naturally come to Bitcoin because they ask the deeper questions. Like it's either the way that Bitcoin actually introduced that, or that because they were asking critical questions, they were asking deeper questions, they had time to research, sit down and read a book instead of a Netflix series, that they actually could discover Bitcoin because they had the mental capacity to. So really cool to see that with you also. And yeah, really cool. Thank you so much for sharing. Before we have an entertain in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, is there something outside of Bitcoin that changed your mindset completely?
Is there something outside of Bitcoin that changed my mindset completely? I mean, I would just say my relationship with Jesus Christ. I don't want to like press any of my beliefs on anyone, but like that was ultimately what changed. It was like reading the scriptures and reading the Bible and understanding like Jesus was a real person. You can't ignore that. Like historically, there's more historical records of the New Testament than there are of any other ancient manuscript. And you can dig down that hole and you can start learning about that in the same way that you learn about Bitcoin and the principles that Jesus tells humans to live by. It makes the world a better place, and a lot of people recognize that. And it's one of the biggest, greatest movements in the world, and it's still around 3,000 years later. And yeah, I mean, I would say that would be the thing that has changed my mindset the most, besides Bitcoin, like changing anything and everything that I do. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty easy thing for me to answer.
Awesome. Really cool. Thank you so much. Billy, before I let you go, where can people find you and Simply Mining?
Yeah, so I mostly post on Twitter, Billy Boone 32, and I'm on LinkedIn as well for the crowd. That's I mean, I don't know how much of your audience is mostly LinkedIn dominant, but those are where I post the majority of my content. And then I also run the Simple Mining account as well, Simple Mining IO on X, and we're also on LinkedIn, Instagram, anywhere where social media is. We have an account there. You can check out the BitcoinMiningInvestor.com, which is my Substack publication. I post weekly, bi-weekly letters to that, and a lot of people find a lot of great value there. And then obviously our website is simplemining.io to learn how to mine Bitcoin. We give investors profitable exposure to Bitcoin mining, and I mentioned a lot of things that are involved in that, but that's where you could go to learn more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Billy, for being on. And thank you so much also everyone for listening and watching, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.